You're relentlessly pursuing greatness and your life isn't endless. What does that look like for you for the rest of the years you're on this planet?
To love harder, to say what I need to say so there's never any incomplete conversations.
You go to Peru and you do your first ayahuasca journey. How was that experience?
At the time, I didn't know what I was seeing. I was like, why are there like beings behind the shaman and these people? And I was like, what are they doing?
What are the reasons why you would suggest people work with plant medicine?
They're all working towards creating the catalyst for healing within the person.
So let's start with your favorite quote.
Okay. Essentially, the quote is, "Let us not waste any of our time. Though there may be more beautiful ones, this one is ours." And that quote for me really is a call to action to recognize that our time on this planet is limited, but we act as if our time is endless. And that comes from Marcus Aurelius. He said it in like his meditations. We gain and we lose a lot of things in life: money, love, friends, connections, prestige, whatever, right? And we could always get those things back. What we could never get back is time and energy. We all have a laundry list of things that we want out of life, experiences we want to have, feelings we want to feel, things we want to see, materials we may want, but we actually don't pursue them. Maybe because of fear, I don't know why, right? It varies from person to person. But I like to think that I live my life of those feelings that I want to feel. I pursue them, and I pursue them rigorously. A lot of things have happened to me in my 44 years on this planet. I don't fear much anymore. I don't really fear death either. I fear the pain. Nobody wants to suffer. But the greatest fear that I do have is that the day that I die, and I'm like, and the man I've become meets the man I could have become, right? And that man I want to become is something that I try to rigorously pursue. I rigorously pursue every day. And it looks very different, right? Feeding the mind, challenging the body, challenging the spirit, pushing yourself. Because I feel that everybody has some kind of inherent greatness in them. That is our potential. And one of the worst things that we could do is waste potential. So I seek that greatness for myself.
You're relentlessly pursuing greatness and your life isn't endless. What does that look like for you for the rest of the years you're on this planet?
To love harder, to say what I need to say so there's never any incomplete conversations, to go to sleep at night and be able to look at myself in the mirror and brush my teeth and not break eye contact, right? To say those things to myself that I say to other people, that you're a good man, right? That you did good today, you did the right thing today. Because I believe that in my own journey, it's a constant push-pull between the source of light and the shadow and aspects of myself. So for me to exercise some semblance of mastery of myself, that's the test. At the end of the night, can I look at myself and say, like, you did right. You did the things that you set out to do today. You did more good than bad. And you honored yourself and other people. Because I think that's living in the law of reciprocity.
When did you have your first kind of awakening into this insight?
I don't think that it was necessarily one particular moment. It was a series of moments and a snowball effect. And a lot of it started when I first went to Peru. I've always been a very kind of existential, philosophical, contemplative person, even as a child. But to actually take that power and not feeding into the fear of conformity or those societal boundaries in the paths only happened once I reached like my 30s, early to mid 30s. And that's after my first journey to Peru, where I did a 10-day ayahuasca retreat and had some incredible insights that forced me to examine myself and my interaction with my own reality in a deeper kind of way, to find a deeper meaning and purpose into what exactly it is that I'm doing, not just the baseline simple things. I'm just working to make money so I can live a good life. It's like, nah. For me, that's not enough.
So take us back to the moment before you went to Peru. What stoked that fire to examine beyond whatever your current life was at the time?
At the time, I was working as a personal trainer in Manhattan. My girlfriend and I were always interested in health and wellness, and not just physical health and wellness, but emotional and spiritual and mental health and wellness. We're both people who push ourselves in different kinds of ways, in very similar ways. And it was such an interesting thing because my best friend Marcos, we met at a mutual friend's gym, and he was reading this book called The Cosmic Serpent. And I saw the book on the table and I was like, whose is this? And he's like, it's mine. And then we exchanged information and became best friends like that. And we were all talking about consciousness and different realms of reality and the deeper meanings of life. And my girlfriend was like, let's go to Peru and do ayahuasca. And I was like, all right, like I'm in. It's an adventure. Like, let's do it. Peru's a mystical place. And I've always been interested in mysticism and ancient history. And I hate to use the word or the term alternative versions of civilization, because I do believe that what we've been told is a lie. To make things simple and linear, that's what really sparked that journey into the next stage, to really peel back the layers.
Our Future Nature is brought to you today by Authentic Gallery. Authentic Gallery makes buying and collecting stunning and impactful art easy, with a high percentage of proceeds going towards our vetted partner charities. If you want to buy art and contribute to an impactful cause, well, check out Authentic Gallery. That's spelled AWETHENTIC gallery.com. As a special treat to my listeners, you can use the discount code OFNPOD. That's OFNPOD to get a 10% discount off all of my limited edition prints. So check out Authentic Gallery and start browsing now. Thanks very much.
You go to Peru and you do your first ayahuasca journey.
Yeah.
Tell us, how was that experience?
We went in a circle. Everybody sat in a circle in the yurt, and they asked us like why we were there. And different people had different reasons. You know, one guy suffered from seizures. Another one was working on their issues with their parents. And when it came to me, I was like, I don't know. I'm just curious about the nature of consciousness. I'm not curious about consciousness. I'm curious about the nature of consciousness. What makes that up? And the shaman and his facilitator team had a nice little giggle. And then that night we drank the medicine. And I had some really, I didn't have a foundation to really put into a framework of what I was witnessing and what I was experiencing, because it's so many things happening at one time. I feel nauseous. I have like this narrative running in my mind. My stomach's hurting. So there's physical things going on. Then there's this narrative mentally going on. And then there's another story that I'm watching. And what I witnessed was, what I believe I didn't know at the time, I didn't know what I was seeing. I was like, why are there like beings behind the shaman and these people? And I had my eyes open and I was like, what are they doing? That's weird. Am I hallucinating? Like, what is this? And that's the kind of narrative, because I'm coming from that kind of work, this spiritual or psychedelic work. This is hallucinations, and this is unresolved trauma or analytical overlays or preconceived notions, or did I see this in a movie? All of those thoughts are in my the back of my head. So I entered into the whole journey with a healthy dose of skepticism. And I saw these things about the shaman. I was in like the air and like something. I didn't know what it was. And when I looked at my body, I wasn't black, I was white. And I was bigger, and I had like hair on my forearms. And when I touched my face, I had like a thick beard. And then when I looked around, I saw people doing things. I didn't know what was going on, but then intuitively, this being that I was in was doing things, and he was telling people things in a language I couldn't understand. And then I found a mirror in that journey, and I looked in the mirror and I was white, and I saw that I had a uniform on. Even when I looked at the uniform, I was like, oh, this is a military uniform. I'm in the air and it's pretty frantic. There's explosions. I'm in war. And I'm looking around and I was like, what the hell? And I realized that I was in a blimp and I was telling people what to do. So I must have been like a ranking official in whatever military this was. And it was a German military kind of campaign, whatever, during some kind of war. In that vision, the blimp got shot down and I was telling people to get off and they were jumping out with parachutes. And then when it was my turn, there was no parachute. And it was like this thought I had in the mind was either go down, you're either going to burn to death and blow up with this blimp, or you can jump out the window. And I jumped. I'm experiencing falling as this soldier with terror and fear. And then all of a sudden, I jumped out of that body and I looked at the soldier, and the soldier was scared to see me. And I told him, don't worry about it. I'm you and you're going to come back as me. The only thing that matters right now is how you die. And he smiled at that and then hit the ground. And then I woke up out of the journey. And I didn't sleep that first night after the first ayahuasca journey. And the next morning I went to the shaman and I went to the group of facilitators and I was like, hey, look, this is really weird. And this is what I saw. And I went to each facilitator and the shaman and I was telling them what I saw. And I was like, this was about, I saw this person behind you and they were doing this. And it happens that I was looking at their spirit guides and I didn't know. And they're like, oh, that's like my master. That's my teacher. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then the shaman was like, what do you do? And I was like, well, I'm a personal trainer in New York, you know. And he was like, well, that's just something you do. That's not who you are. I invite you and your girlfriend to come and study the medicine and help facilitate journeys here and really learn your true path. And I was like, well, no, but, you know. And I finished that 10-day retreat and then I went back to New York and nothing was the same. Like my interactions with the world, it shifted. And it shifted in a way that only in hindsight can I look back on and say that it wasn't as meaningful as it once was to me, because I knew there was another side to life that I wasn't fulfilling or I wasn't experiencing enough or didn't have enough information about. And that curious part of my nature started to play in the back of my mind more and more.
Wow, that's quite the journey. And after that time when you got back to New York, how long did it take for you to leave that life and start a new one?
About a year and change, maybe like a year and 3 months, because we originally went in April for my birthday. We went back that same year in November and we did a 3-week Diente in isolation where we were reading A Course in Miracles and some other books, and we stayed. My girlfriend and I stayed in isolation in this one room where they brought us the food, gave us the medicine to drink, and we would just sit with each other. And then after 3 weeks, we did 6 ayahuasca journeys back to back, 6 days in a row. And that opened me up to more and more of my own process, aspects about myself to look at, and then the mystical realms, for lack of a better term. We went back for a month in November, then came back for the holidays. And then I want to say we went back again in February for 2 months. And by that point, it was almost as if like we were trying to figure out how to live in New York and live in Peru. I've learned this from hardcore gnosis and life experience, you cannot serve two masters. I had this moment where I was on my patio. It was like a Wednesday and I was smoking a cigarette, looking at like my patio, looked at the Empire State Building and faced the east side of Manhattan. And it was a dope apartment. And I looked around at the apartment and I saw these material possessions that I on some level attributed to accomplishments and success. But deep down, I knew that that wasn't it. Yes, that I felt accomplished and I felt successful in that field. And in that moment, I asked myself, like, what would the 25-year-old version of myself think? And he would be proud. And then I asked the 15-year-old version and he didn't even know who I was. I had this feeling inside of me that it was time to let this go and recreate myself again. And my girlfriend came home and I was like, hey, let's move. And she was like, all right, cool, let's do it. Let's move to Peru. We'll move to Peru then. And she decided on a date. And we sold all our stuff and moved.
Well, first, actually, I want to know just who are the two masters?
I think, this is a funny thing. One of the masters is our shadow. The other master could be our light side. It could be the invisibility. One of our masters could be greed, insecurity, lack of self-worth, all of those things, right? And when we're serving those masters of those lower vibrational aspects of ourself or the shadow sides of ourself, we conspire to create situations to assuage ourselves of those seemingly negative emotions. Or if we feel insecure or not being seen and lack acceptance, then we're that much more boisterous and have attention-seeking behavior and tend to be a little bit more controversial or boisterous or whatever else to present this image. So we receive that attention because on some level that attention validates us and gives us a sense of self-worth. I believe that we have a few different masters inside of us, right? And so I'm not speaking of the master who's skillful at wielding their magic. I'm speaking of the master in the terms of a slave and master power differential that exists within all of us.
Set a scene for us, because you mentioned the Diente, but I think the Diente experience seems extremely challenging. You're in isolation. Where are you? What are you being served? What are you dealing with when you're in isolation for that long and being served a plant?
One of the most powerful, I've done a lot, but I'll tell you, one of the most powerful dientes I did was a mix of two plants. One was tobacco, Nicotiana rustica, Amazonian tobacco, and another plant called ajo sacha. And it's a green plant that smells like garlic and tastes like garlic, but isn't like a bulb of garlic. And I was in Iquitos in Peru, and I was put in isolation in Diente under a shaman there. And I'm in a structure, a wooden structure, like, plywood floors, mosquito nets up, and there's just a bed in a mosquito net, big room, nothing in it. And there's a desk and a chair. You're just there with yourself. And there's another little room in the back where there's a bucket of sawdust with a toilet seat on it, and that's your bathroom. And a little shower head that spits lukewarm water on you. And you're just there. And there's no food, there's nothing. And the shaman comes and he serves you medicine. And then he sends the staff to put a smoothie or like banana and rice and some kind of leafy green on your doorstep for food. And you drink this medicine. And this medicine is like drinking peppery tobacco garlic water. And I drank it 2 times a day for 7 days. Normally, you would drink it once a day for 7 days, but they were like, for whatever reason, he felt as if he needed to put me through that. Tobacco is a very interesting plant because it has nicotine in it, and I already smoke, so my body can accept the nicotine, but this is in almost poisonous doses of nicotine. So your body's forced to rapidly detox, and that rapid detoxification of nicotine and tobacco looks like projectile vomit. So he would give me about maybe 2 to 3 liters of water to drink after he gave me a proper cup of tobacco, which was a little bit bigger than this glass, so it was about that big filled. And you drink it. And then you would sit for about 20 minutes to 30 minutes with it. You would just sit. And then you would start to purge. And as you're purging, you're drinking more water. And a rule of thumb for those particular shamans are, if you're not purging, you're drinking until you finish the 3 liters of water. So it's just, you're just cycling through this. And the tobacco is like antifungal, antibacterial. It really cleans out your system deep, deep, deep. And the Ayahuasca, the garlic plant, like how they work is like garlic as a blood cleanser. You smell differently. And the spirit of tobacco, they say, is more of the protector and the cleanser, is a very powerful healing plant. It's not necessarily a psychedelic, though people do have psychedelic visions and journeys on it, because I would attribute it to the high amounts of nicotine in it. That clears you out. The garlic plant, or the Ayahuasca, cleanses your blood on a deeper level, so you smell differently. So my sweat smelled differently. And they call that plant the stalker, because they said that hunters would use that plant. They'd drink it before they would go hunting in the jungle, so the animals couldn't smell them and run away. Now, metaphorically or esoterically or spiritually, we ingest that plant in this day and age for us to be able to stalk our true self. Because the minute we see these parts of ourselves that we find to be dark or negative or whatever else, we turn our eye to that envious side of ourselves, or the insecure side, or the jealous side, or the wrathful side. We don't want to believe that we have those qualities in us. We're almost ashamed or feeling guilty of them, so we run from them. Where this plant allows you to experience yourself in a different kind of way. How I grew up in my life and who I am as a person dictated that I need to maintain control. Because control makes me feel safe, because me in control of the situation denotes some level of predictability. And predictability makes you feel safe. But now you're in this jungle and you don't have power over your food. You can't flush the toilet. The water's not strong, water pressure. All of these little things. The bed's not comfortable. It's so hot. There's no fan. There's no AC. Monkeys are in my room eating my food. There's bugs. You find everything wrong about the situation. And you find like that you're powerless to adjust it. The only thing that you do have power over is how you accept it. How much grace and poise can you truly exercise in those situations? And it made me think of, in the movie Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee, and he was fighting all these dudes and he had a pair of nunchucks. And then he walked into this room and there are these high walls and he can't climb up the wall. And when he turns around, there's another wall that drops behind him. And now he's in this 4-sided room where he can't climb the walls and he's ready to fight. And he looks around and he realizes that he can't get out of here. So he puts the nunchucks around his neck and he just sits down and goes into meditation to wait, to see what's going to present itself and to prepare himself for that. And I felt in those moments during that Diente in isolation, that is part of the training, part of this path of shamanism, part of this path of humanism, to really understand yourself and to see what your limits are really. So it forced me to be in a deeper space of acceptance of the situation.
And at some point, obviously, you decided to leave Peru and take these learnings and serve medicine to others. And you work with a couple plants or many plants. Maybe you can tell us a bit about working with psilocybin for people that are not going into a dieta, but maybe experiencing psychedelics for the first time, what are the reasons why you would suggest people work with plant medicine?
I work with plants in general. Some are psychedelic, some are not. They're all working towards creating the catalyst for healing within the person. And depending upon the person and the situations and the issues that they present with, I would, for lack of a better term, prescribe a certain plant or a certain dieta that goes along with preparation for ingesting the plant. Psilocybin differs greatly from ayahuasca, not only because one is a fungus and one is, a root. There's a vine and a leaf that's mixed together. But they produce different effects in the body, while at the same time being incredibly similar. Psilocybin creates the environment for different areas of your brain to be firing off at the same time, so we experience these non-linear states of consciousness and awareness, as does ayahuasca. They differ in the sense that I find that ayahuasca is far more of a physical kind of medicine. It's not just mental or heart or emotional. It's you feel it in your body, as you do with psilocybin, but I liken ayahuasca to be swallowed by the snake because they liken it to the serpent, to where psilocybin feels like I'm more in an open field and I'm, witnessing certain things. But depending on certain people's physiology, medical background, all of those things, I would either work with psilocybin or ayahuasca. I believe that ayahuasca is far more intense in not only its preparation, but in its duration and the experience of ingesting that medicine. Psilocybin's intense in a different kind of way. Psilocybin could be much more visual, where sometimes ayahuasca isn't visual and people chase visions. And it's like, what is that saying? It's like, believe half of what you hear and none of what you see. And depending on the dosage of medicine, it's like, I just listened to a podcast with Jamie Whelan, like he's so dope. And he was like, well, like people taking egoic doses. And I was like, an egoic dose. And I just started giggling because it's like just enough. You're served just enough medicine to believe a conspiracy about yourself that you're reincarnated Buddha and it's your mission to be here to do these certain things, Because Terence McKenna speaks about a heroic dose, which is like 10 and up. That's like my major ideas surrounding ayahuasca and psilocybin. But I want to say this to people so they understand this. There is no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. Ayahuasca is not going to heal your issues. Mushrooms aren't going to heal your issues. Ketamine won't heal your issues. Psychotherapy won't heal your issues. None of those things. There's no silver bullet. This is an accumulation of time and energy put towards you demanding of yourself. These compounds create a catalyst for healing. They allow you to look at yourself and open up the doors of perception of yourself and your views of reality from a different perspective, not so subjective. So you're not necessarily re-traumatizing or re-experiencing certain things that may have occurred in your life. You're able to look at it not from a detached point of view, but from an unattached point of view.
In that journey of mind, body, soul work, can you tell us a bit more about the body part of the work that you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I believe that the soma, or the unconscious subconscious, that realm isn't something outside of us. It's exhibited through our enteric nervous system and our fascia. I believe that the fascia, which is like this matrix web-like white material that's pervasive throughout our body, is linked or is part of the enteric nervous system. I believe that that very well may be the enteric nervous system, and that the gut is the interface for our brain and our mind or whatever else to understand these concepts of whatever it's picking up on in the environment. I don't believe that there's a separation between physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. An emotional distortion in a person will present itself physically. You could see it in people's posture. People's posture is directly linked on some level to their conscious interaction with reality or the lens in which they view reality through. If we sat in a cafe in St. Petersburg, Russia, and we were just looking at people walking by on the street, we could say like, oh, that person seems depressed by their body language. That person seems confident. Oh, this person has a lot on their mind. You could see it in the furrowing of the brow, all of those different things. So there's a mental or emotional state that's manifested physically, and that reveals itself through micro expressions, because our micro expressions are a way for us to communicate on a non-mouth noise level. Our spiritual distortions generally exhibit themselves in our expressions, in our verbal interactions with the world, or even our physical interactions with the world. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk wrote this book called The Body Keeps the Score, and he worked with many people who've had PTSD and soldiers and kidnapped people and all of those people. And he shows just how these reactive patterns are actually locked in our viscera and in our body just through the way that we move. And he's worked on different therapeutic modalities to help people integrate them and unlock them and to give them that sense of freedom again. For me, my shamanic work, my vision, as well as my Western profession of neuromuscular therapy, occupational therapy, all of that stuff gives me a different way of looking at people when I do interact with them, right? To be able to see where they're holding tension in their body. And I realize that barring a physical, like a mechanism of injury, a physical injury, or a structural deformity, most of our asymmetries or distortions in our movement patterns in our body is taking place some level in the mind, in the brain, and in the soma. So I work with people through utilizing plant medicine, body work, energy work, sound, diet, supplementation, breathing, sleeping, movement, all of those things, for us to be able to tap into the soma and take these seemingly different fields of awareness that we have, or these separate fields of awareness that we have of ourself, and bring them all together to create unity. And I believe we have three eyes, right? You have two to look, one to see. And I'm not saying like, oh, my third eye is decalcified and I'm like, you know, this mystical whatever, but I do believe that mysticism or magic is just science that can't be explained as yet. So when I look at people and I see certain physical distortions, that would lead me, if I make an assumption or if I make a judgment, instead of acting out the judgment, I act. Empathy isn't something that's just verbal or physical. I believe that empathy is something that's also energetic. And when we're sensitive enough and we have our systems and bodies attuned enough, we could actually tune in to people in more of a conscious way, because we're all tuning into each other, mostly unconscious or subconsciously anyway. It's just giving conscious attention to it and then following it up with a question.
Tell us how you would call yourself. Do you find purpose in this work?
I'll answer it backwards. I find a deep sense of purpose in the work that I do, because it allows me to connect to people in a different kind of way and to help in some level to be of service to them, whether it's serving them a glass of water or serving them a glass of ayahuasca. To me, it's all the same. It's to be of service and to be of use. I've been called a lot of things in my life, but I'll tell you, the worst thing that you can call me that would actually get a reaction out of me is useless, because that denotes a waste of time, space, and energy. One of the things that I'm against for myself is being a one-trick pony. If I don't work with plants, then does that mean that I'm useless? It's like, no, I can do this, this, and this. Okay, so let's take away the movement component. I can still do these things. Let's take away the diet and supplementation. I can still work on breath and these things. Because all roads do lead to Rome. I can address something emotional through physically addressing something. We could address something mental through energetically or emotionally addressing something else. We are just one. We just believe that we're these separate beings within one.
And I think you've talked about this before in terms of your individual work and this collective awakening that might be accelerating at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just interested in your opinion. You know, I think in the past, when you've had, you know, abilities to see beyond our present day view of things, people would go to the caves and meditate or go to the mountains or leave society. And I was just wondering, what are your thoughts about bringing together a collective awakening versus seeking your own personal enlightenment, say?
Our ability to create shifts in people aren't just relegated to doing one-on-one direct work. Sometimes it's just being. And your being represents something to somebody else, something to strive towards, or you may represent freedom. Once upon a time, people used to recuse themselves to caves or monasteries and those kinds of things. And I believe that at some point in time, it's useful to go into your winter arc as a human being, but we still reside in this world and in the world of length, width, and depth, and the 3D and the shadow aspect of the world. And it's contingent upon people who have done this internal work. The real test comes for us when we're presented with the people who trigger us. So when we go back home for the holidays for our family, how do you take that quote unquote enlightenment or that growth and development or those insights and actually apply them in a way to enhance communication for you to release those judgments and to adjust the context of relationships, to actually begin to recontextualize the relationship, to understand the person, not the archetype or the projection that you give that person so you box them in. That's allowing true freedom of communication and communication of truths and real energetic exchanges, to find those spaces of peace internally, to find that deeper sense of purpose and meaning and become that and live that. Don't get on a soapbox. I'll throw a tomato at you. Go around those people who hold you in the past. They don't see the present you, and show them the present you, not in your preaching, just in your actions, in the subjects that you speak about, the way that you appreciate life in a different kind of way.
What would you say are the symptoms of somebody ready to do the work or needing the work to be done?
The quality of the questions that you're asking yourself. The right question is, who have I become? Immediately, as soon as you ask yourself that question, it's like, who have I become? Okay, well, how have I become that? Why? And as soon as you start asking yourself the question, why? Now that steps deeper into this existential journey, because I believe that on some level, this spiritual journey or this healing journey that people talk about is really an existential journey, an existential or spiritual or healing journey. To what end though? But why? And it's like, well, towards mastery, because we embrace that need to do those things are a part of our shadow to a degree. And this is about embracing the shadow, not running from it, because light creates shadow, and that shows you both sides of it and both sides of ourself. What is the meaning behind what I'm doing? Why am I doing these things? How are they making me feel? Who have I become? What will I become? Who do I want to become? Once we start getting into that level of questioning of oneself, and you're really pulling back those veils and opening those doors to perception, that to me is the indicator that you're ready to maybe step it into a deeper realm.
Thank you. I want you to repeat one more time, because this was such an intro for me. That one frame is like, I'm not interested in who you are. We know who you are. We're here to find out who you've become, or something to that effect. Just
right. If you're asking yourself, who am I? Just look at what you do. Just look at what you do. When you ask yourself, who have I become? That requires you to look at your past and to look at your experiences, because then at some point you'll realize that you're only the perception of your experiences. You're only the perception of them and how they made you feel. And then you develop some kind of habitual thought pattern or whatever else to justify your actions. I think a much more useful question, who have I become? How have I become that? Why did I become those are far more empowering questions, because those actually begin to question your own perception of that reality. Those questions pull you into the present moment. Then once you're in that present moment, you can dictate who you will become, because now you're making active choices.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
I think we're done for time, but I think we could carry on forever. So
That's usually how it goes.
yeah.
Our Future Nature is also brought to you today by Authentic Journeys. Authentic Journeys brings together high-performing entrepreneurs, CEOs, leaders, and changemakers with ancient and modern modalities for intense personal growth to deeply align your individual and our collective purposes for positive change in the world. All of our trips are carbon offset, and we only partner with companies that have sustainable practices and credentials. Let us take you on a journey that will enrich your mind, body, and soul while helping the planet and local communities. Check out authenticjourneys.com. That's AWETHENTIC journeys.com to learn more about our upcoming wellness experiences, travel adventures, and retreats to help you find your awe. Thank you for tuning in to Our Future Nature. Please remember to like and subscribe to keep up with the latest episodes. And if you enjoyed the podcast, it'd be really helpful if you could take a few minutes to leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Please also follow us on Instagram and Threads at Our Future Nature Pod for behind the scenes and additional resources, or on X at OFN_podcast. That's OFN_podcast. You can find our social media pages on the podcast episode description. You can also follow me at Shelley Lee-Davies if you want to be updated on the work that I do in green entrepreneurship, advocacy, and conservation. And finally, Our Future Nature is powered by the team at Authentic Studio. Thanks everyone, and see you next time.